The thing I get asked the most in my comments is what are my PC specs and how do I run a city of 1.5 million population. So in this video, I'm going to go through my hardware and game settings. Also, we'll take a look at the city running in real time and compare some things like FPS. But first, the hardware. It's time to show you my NASA PC. Let's start with the most important component in running large cities in my opinion, the CPU. Now this is an Intel Core i9-13900K, and it performs pretty well. But if I was building this PC over again, specifically for City Skylines II, I would go with a Ryzen 7 7700X3D, or a more high-end X3D variant if possible. And here's why. At extreme populations, the game simply generates more simulation work than it can spread across any CPU. Linus Tech Tips tested this game with an insane PC including AMD's Threadripper Pro 9995WX, and it got a frame rate in the 30s and 40s in a city of 183,000, and that was in 1080p. But also, only 31% of the CPU was even being used. So you could have 192 cores, a 6090, and 258 gigabytes of RAM, and you'll get no more performance than the rig you see on the Linus Tech Tips video. But a place you can make up ground and achieve a real performance boost in your CPU after 8 cores, assuming you have a good clock speed and chip architecture, is the L3 cache. My CPU has 36 megabytes, but the Ryzen X3D variants have 96 megabytes, which will produce a notably better experience in City Skylines 2. Okay, I spent a lot of time on the CPU because it helps tell the overall story about the game as it relates to hardware. So I'll quickly go through the rest of this rig. This i9-13900K is seated in an Asus ROG Maximus Z790 Hero motherboard and cooled with an Arctic Liquid Freezer 2420. For the GPU, I have an MSI Gaming RTX 4080. I have 64 gigabytes of RAM supplied by two 32 gigabyte sticks of Corsair Vengeance. But you're good to go with 32 gigabytes for City Skylines 2 before you get into some pretty steep diminishing returns with RAM. For storage, I have a 4 terabyte Crucial T700 M.2, and it's all powered by a Corsair RM1200X and housed in a Corsair 7000D Airflow tower. Now let's get into the game settings. I'm playing in 4K resolution with depth of field mode disabled. I'm using DLSS in balanced or automatic, and we will do some gameplay comparisons with DLSS on and off a little bit later. I've got clouds and fog enabled and everything else set to high except for motion blur. I keep it off for the most part. Okay, let's take a look at performance in game now. I've got the game running on the first speed, zoomed all the way out, and our FPS is bouncing from 15 to 20. The CPU is over its base clock speed, but I'm not quite sure how that translates into these percentages on the Steam performance overlay. But it's safe to say, the CPU is working pretty hard right now, with core temps into the 80s and 90s, averaging 4.6 GHz, with peaks over 5. Our 4080 is being used at 80% on average, and using 12 of the 16 gigabytes of VRAM. As for system RAM, we are consistently at 32 gigabytes. And regardless of what I'm doing in-game, system performance remains pretty consistent across the hardware. So let's toggle some settings and see if we can see any noticeable difference. And we will start with VSync. I really can't find a noticeable difference, so let's try motion blur. Looks about the same to me. Okay, let's try with DLSS completely off. Now I'm noticing some pixelation on the buildings in the distance. Here is DLSS on max quality. And here is DLSS on max performance. The only real difference I notice is when DLSS is completely off. And from what I see, if DLSS is on, regardless of the setting, you'll get the same results with a high population city. Let's take a look at our hardware performance in a smaller city. This one is approaching 250,000 population, and this is where I start to see the slowdown happen on my machine, but you can see the CPU is considerably less utilized, and we did pick up a few extra FPS. And here's an even smaller city of 30,000, and utilization is even less on the CPU here, but 30 to 40 FPS is still all we're able to get. Okay, so there's a quick look at my experience in game, and I wonder how many of you consider 15 to 20 FPS playable. I think a misconception is that what many see on my YouTube videos are how the game performs in real time, but in reality, I smooth that 20 FPS shot out in editing, usually by speeding up the footage until it matches a more natural looking FPS. So there you have it. I hope some of you found this informative or even helpful in your pursuit of an enjoyable experience in game. Feel free to leave your thoughts and questions in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.